Hey everyone, welcome back. So in an attempt to make this a digestible video and to really paint the picture of where I'm at and where I've been and where I'm trying to get to, I'm just gonna jump in here and just kind of give an overview. So in the last 8 months, I have been troubleshooting why the passenger side front cylinder of my engine is cold. When I temperature probe it at the head, it's less than 200 degrees. When I go just a few inches down from that point, it's a lot hotter. It's up to 400 degrees, as you'd expect at the head. And that's more in line with what all of the other cylinders are. If you temperature probe all the other ones, with the exception of the one right behind number one, we'll get into why, they're all in the 400 to 500 range, right? Most of the time, even just cruising around. So I have troubleshot every aspect of the car that I can think of, right? I mean, we're talking new engine, new wiring, new spark plugs, new everything with the exception of the fuel rails, the supercharger, and the fuel pressure regulator. So this leads me to what has actually taken place. So the boost bypass stopped working on the supercharger. If you know anything about LSA or positive displacement superchargers, they use a boost bypass for gas mileage. Basically, when you're driving normal and you're not trying to make horsepower, they divert the boost pressure away from the rotors so that the engine can run and not have a big strain on it, right? Which is great. I'm trying to troubleshoot in this video why I don't have boost, right?
Flashback.
All right, here's the situation. So we are done tuning. So we tuned from 2000 at wide open throttle all the way up to 65. So that's a huge sweep. I told them I probably won't be down at 2, but just in case, that's great. The big issue is we have belt slip. So basically when you stab the throttle at 2000, the boost is hitting 12. And then by the time the run is over at 65, it tapered to, like, I think he said 6. So we either have a ton of belt slip or the blower's not able to support that kind of power, but I don't think that's the issue since it's only a 5.3. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to order a green belt. Okay. So the first cylinder on the passenger side is still colder at the head than all of the other ones. If you do it down the tube, it's within 50 degrees of the other ones. The whole driver's side runs hotter than the whole passenger side. So I don't know what to make of it. We are still troubleshooting boost issues. So I put a brand new belt because I have some extras, because I figured that I might have belt issues on the trip. Literally out of the package, it actually slipped worse than the old one did. So I think at the start it was like 12 PSI, and by the time I was at Redline, it was like 4 or 5. It was like really bad. I bought multiples of these because they were so cheap on Amazon. You can buy the green belt for $67 for one, or I bought 2 of those black belts for 30 bucks, right? So I bought these guys, Dremel cutting bits. Grind some perpendicular lines in the supercharger pulley. Idea is, as the belt rides over, because it's so tight, it'll actually kind of pull it down into the grooves and it'll give it a little extra bite. It seems really popular online. I found a CTSV forum that some guy did it in 2014 and said he gained like 3 PSI. So, it can't hurt. All right, so here's what I did. I took a piece of tape, 1 inch in between marks, marked it, and then I just cut them. So I tried not to get into the outside. It was kind of difficult not to, but honestly, I think it turned out pretty good. As you'll see in the video, the belt went the other direction. It went back instead of forward, which means I have too many spacers. So what I did was, on my fancy little get up here, I put 2 spacers where I only had 1, and then I removed them from this center rib, or this center bolt. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take one of those extra spacers out and just see if that fixes it, keeps it straight, because it didn't jump backwards that far. But we're out in the sticks, right off the freeway, trying to just, not take it all the way home, take it all the way back out, etc., etc. I brought all the tools I can just do here on the side of the road. So let's see what happens. All right, and we're back home. So I have learned that it's 2 washers on the water pump mount, no washers on the top, which kind of kicks it back a little bit. Belt's not coming off. That's great. Bad news. Still getting belt slip, like really bad. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the hat off. I'm going to put a new gasket on there. I'm going to re-torque all of the bolts for the supercharger, just in case maybe they're leaking. I'm going to let this thing cool off, go eat some dinner, and come back. All right, it's after dinner, so we have the cover off, as you can see. The actual base gasket looks okay, the one that actually goes on the other side of the heat exchanger. But what I'm noticing that there's a lot of oil around the blower outside. If none of this makes a difference, I have new gaskets for the head side. I would be surprised if that was the issue, because it does hold 12 pounds. It just seems like it just has really bad belt slip. All right, hopefully you can hear me. So we got everything torqued back down. So I took a few of the blower bolts out and they were not oily on the threads, which indicates to me that the sealant was working. So I put them back in. I only took a couple out, but I re-torqued everything. I actually used a torque wrench this time, and I'm pretty sure they were not as tight as they should have been. So we'll take it out. We'll drive it cautiously optimistic. So I'll report back. All right, so here's the update. So we tightened down the blower. Doesn't seem like it did anything. I still see belt slip when I'm just watching the boost gauge here. Hopefully you can see it. We're gonna run the draggy because it's nighttime and the car's warmed up and I'm already out here. So you can watch that and we'll see if there's any improvement. The car feels pretty good, but it doesn't feel fast. Like, it feels quick, but it doesn't feel fast. So let's make a run here and just see what it does. Actually, let's get on the same ground. This is concrete back here. All right. But there's a run. So you could clearly see it was like 2 PSI at red line. It just sucks. I don't know what the hell is causing this. So the only other thing I can think of is if there's oil on the pulley. I mean, I can clean them all with brake cleaner. I don't know if that's going to make any difference. I mean, it's worth a shot at this point, but I don't know. I should have hit the red button. I realize that now. Okay, so as I said, I would be brake cleaning all the pulleys, but one of the things that I've noticed is, and you can probably see it here, there just is a discoloration in this pulley. And if I run a wire wheel over it, we get a lot of rubber out of this thing. So I don't know if that's from the current belt or if that's from the previous belts, but I mean, I'm guessing that's not gonna, well, I don't know. Rubber on rubber would be the most grippy, wouldn't it, when you think? Anyways, I'm gonna clean this whole thing, brake clean it again, and then hope that it works. All right, so here we are. So we have cleaned the crank pulley. We have cleaned it with brake cleaner. We have cleaned the supercharger pulley. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna do a draggy pull, and I'm gonna hit the record button this time, because last time I did not. We're just going to see what it does. Okay, here we go. Smell rubber, which I would assume is the belts, but who knows? Aggravating.
End of flashback.
So I'm looking everywhere. I'm looking at belts. I'm looking at pulleys. I'm looking at, cleaning pulleys with a pick. I'm doing a lot of things that would typically be related to not making boost. And then I engaged Jesse Olson at Olson Custom Works, and I said, hey, here's my situation, because I run his pulley, I run his idler, his tensioner, like a bunch of things that he created. And I said, I'm really having a really hard time like making boost here. Off the hit, it's 12 PSI. By the end of the run, I'm at like 2 PSI. Like, what is going on here? And he said, here's some things you can check. You can check this, check that, check. And one of the things he said was a boost bypass. And I was hesitant to check that because a month ago, I replaced this thing. So when I first got the supercharger, I had a bypass on it. It worked for a while. And then at some point, it started making a weird noise. I put a post out. Jesse was, a matter of fact, the one at the time to reply and say, yeah, it's a bad bypass. Just replace it. Okay, no problem. So replace the bypass. When I got the new one, I tested it, and everything worked fine, as you'd expect off the vehicle. Put it on the vehicle. The engine was not running well at the time, at least I thought. And, it just never really got tested. Well, I just went and got the car tuned. In this video, you'll see. And come to find out, the boost bypass was not working. Why is the boost bypass not working? Let's do a bench test. So I put a vacuum gauge on it, and it had nothing but fuel in it. I'm like, how is there fuel in my bypass? So if you look at how it's routed, it comes off the supercharger, off of the boost reference, and it wise goes right to the bypass, and then it goes to the fuel pressure regulator. The fuel pressure regulator, if you are uninformed, it uses a vacuum reference so that if you have boost, right? So if you put pressure on the fuel pressure regulator, it increases your fuel pressure to compensate for spraying fuel into your cylinders. Great, no problem. I've never had a fuel issue. Every time the boost goes up, the fuel pressure goes right up with it. That's fine. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. Why would I look there? That's not even a thing that seems like it's broken. Well, what had happened was the diaphragm had torn, one of the layers had torn, so it was allowing fuel pressure and vacuum on the other side to suck the fuel out and go into the hose and then right into the inlet of the supercharger, right in the front of it, where coincidentally, number one cylinder is. So it's right on the front of the passenger side. So what was happening is it was siphoning fuel out of the pressure regulator and it going right into cylinder 1 and cylinder 3, which is right behind it. And those two cylinders have consistently been cylinders that did not come up to temperature traditionally. When I ran the engine on the engine stand, I was using a different fuel system. I was using a secondary fuel system, and I had just capped that inlet. So I didn't have that issue. And I don't know where my troubleshooting process fell down, but I completely just spaced it and just thought, well, this must have been an engine issue. So I fixed the engine issue. So when I put it back in, I still have the problem. How did that happen? I never went back because I just was changing so many things and just scrambling to get it all working that I just never really sat down and said, okay, what was the difference between this setup and the setup in the car? And I always just attributed it to being some other problem, like ignition or fueling or, any other problem, frankly. So what we've done is we've gotten to the point now where the engine runs great. It's basically brand new, right? I mean, it's been machined on the block. It's been machined on the heads. Everything has been rebuilt, replaced, refreshed, and is in tip-top shape. And I went and got a tune, and it ran good, but it never made full boost, and it never really felt fast. When I first put the supercharger on the car, it felt fast. It really did. And I've done nothing but make the engine and intake and exhaust better. It should feel faster, and it never did. And I was really confused as to why, but maybe I just thought, it'd been a long time and I was just used to the power. So I didn't think much of it, but just driving it around, it had a weird stumble every once in a while. I would just drive up a hill and it just felt like it was loading up, like it was getting too much fuel. So I always had this in the back of my mind, and it's always been something that's just been nagging at me. And I have just recently, because the Redwood Rally is in, 1 week or less at this point, I have been scrambling. I have just been replacing things and hoping that it fixes the issue. I've replaced the coil extension harnesses. I replaced the coil harness on the coils themselves. I replaced the coil, the spark plugs, the wires, like everything that I've already done. I've already tested all these things before, and it's still not making a difference. And I was just dumbfounded as to what was going on. How I never thought to check the fuel pressure regulator, I don't know. But that's what I did. I never checked it because it's just one of those things that the fuel pressure looks fine. I've never run into a lean condition. It seemed like it was great. So all of this to say, My troubleshooting certainly left some rocks unturned, and that's on me, and I apologize. It's a little bit embarrassing. It's a little bit, confusing. I don't know how I didn't even think to ever test that. I never even put a vacuum gauge on it to just make sure that it was doing what it was supposed to be doing, because the pressure would rise when I needed it to. So I just found this out yesterday. I have to put the video out tonight, so I'm not going to get you any footage of me driving the car, but I'm still waiting on a new boost bypass. I have replaced the diaphragm in the fuel pressure regulator. So in the next video, which is the one we're going to be preparing to leave, I'm going to take it out. I'll get you some footage of it. And I'm anticipating the car just being an animal. I mean, it's a bigger throttle body from the last time I drove it fast. It has a 3-inch exhaust where it was a 2.5 before. There's a whole myriad of reasons that this car should be as fast as it's ever been. So that's the good news. Bad news is I wasted, 8 to 10 months of my life and money and my family's life and money. And it sucks. It really sucks to look back and just say, what a stupid thing that you should have figured out. But here we are. So enjoy the rest of the video. There's a little bit of fun in here. I'm getting stoked now that I know the car's going to be fast. I was actually just going to drive it the way it was. I mean, you'll see in the video, it ran a 13-second quarter mile. I mean, granted, that's on the street and that's with slipping, first gear, but I was just looking forward to the drive, and now I'm looking forward to the racing as well. So sometimes it pays to pay attention. So I was oiling the O-ring for this filter, and I just happened to stick my finger in to get the oil off my glove, and look what I pulled out. Like a pretty serious piece of metal there from the thread creation process that didn't get cut out. That is not normal. So this is a Mobile 1 filter, and I thought they were good. Maybe this is a one-off. I've never really checked, to be honest. Hopefully this is not normal. All right, everyone, still have COVID. Not feeling 100%, but we're making stuff happen. So we got you on time lapse here. So this is the first voyage of the trailer and the new setup. Trailer's empty. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go down to the metal supermarket store. We're gonna get us some DOM tubing so we can put a roll bar in the Nova. So we're picking up 3 14-foot bars. I only need 11 on the biggest, but I wanna make sure I don't run out, so we're gonna go extra. So we're gonna take the big freeway. We'll take one of our smaller freeways. Try to keep the speeds under like 60. Just see how this thing does. It's kind of high in the nose right now because I set it up for a car being in there. Clearly there's not a car in there now, so we'll just see how it goes. So I'll catch back with you after you watch this video. And an unfortunate change of events. So I bought a 7-pin trailer adapter to go from the back of the camper to the truck to extend it because the one in the trailer just wasn't long enough. Well, come to find out it's the wrong pin. It went in there just fine. I thought it engaged. I thought the lights worked. I feel like I had checked them at some point, but too many things going on. So that doesn't work at all. So we're in a different truck. So we're going to take my truck, which will be just fine. I will say that I got the other setup up to 60 on my way home, and it didn't lag or anything. It didn't do anything weird, so that was great. And I'll still show you the footage, obviously, which you've probably already seen. So here we go. Let's take off in the new truck. And here I try to weigh my trailer empty. Damn weigh station's broken. It says it's negative pounds. So, okay, that's not going to happen, I guess. Off we go with the mission. Made it to the metal supermarket. There they are. We'll get her loaded, see how it looks. We got the metal. Boom. It's lashed down a little bit, probably move around, it doesn't matter, it's metal. Everything else in here is wood, so we should be good. Off we go. So we made it back with the tubing, the DOM tubing, no problem there, didn't go anywhere, didn't shift, all's good. So moving on to the next step, because the fun doesn't only stop with the cars, there's also a trailer prep. So these bearings have never been repacked, at least from what I can see. I am going to just take everything out, clean it in gasoline, and give it a good repack, just so I know that everything's good. I've also never taken a look at the brakes, so it's probably a good idea to get in there. So that's what we're doing now. All right, so we got everything apart. It was all just really old grease. I mean, it wasn't, the worst I've ever seen, but it was definitely pretty dark, definitely ready to be changed. So we got the seals on order. I pulled all the bearings out, got everything cleaned up, looking pretty good, as you can see. I'm gonna final clean them tomorrow before I put them in. The seals won't be here till tomorrow. So now it's just that times 3. So, we got quite quite a bit of cleanup to do and some waiting, and then we're going to be good to go. Brakes look good. All the pads still got, or should I say the shoes, still got some life left in them. Not a lot, but they do have some. Looked good until this last one that I worked on. So this last one, as you can see, the outer race has a nick in it, and it's pretty, honestly, it's pretty deep. Pretty wild. The bearing itself looks okay. It's a little overheated at times, but no real indications of major wear yet, but it definitely would have happened. So we got a whole basket of grease and nastiness. Gasoline did great for cleaning all the bearings. So the seals will be here tomorrow. I'll order bearings for this side, or just the front bearing, because I think it's really all it needs. The back one looks fine. The race looks good too. But there it is. Yeah, so once we get everything done, I'll pack them and put them back in, and good to go.